Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday. We have a very special show for you today. We're going to be celebrating the life of a champion and the patron saint of medical cannabis in Florida, Cathy Jordan. So let's jump into this very special rotation. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those maybe tuning in for the very first time, joining us, my name is Christopher Cano. I am the executive director of the Suncoast chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, also a sitting national board member. And I am excited for today's show because we have so many great guests and dignitaries, luminaries in the cannabis space in Florida coming on to celebrate a life of someone who many have deemed the patron saint of medical cannabis in Florida for her activism and fight to end prohibition in this state and bring medical cannabis to so many people suffering from chronic debilitating conditions. And then in the studio, of course, in Ybor City at our headquarters at Chillum Hemp and Mushroom Dispensary, we have our co-hosts who are now just getting settled and sorted in. Of course, there's our deputy director, Carlos Hermida, who's our resident business administrator. and amateur sound engineer. So you got to appreciate all the hard work that Carlos puts into helping us produce this show. For those who don't know, this show started out in Carlos's garage way back in fall of 2014. We've been everywhere from AM radio to FM radio to podcasting and streaming on multiple platforms. Right now, you might be watching on YouTube or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And so if you are on social media right now and you're watching this, go ahead and give us a like button, hit that subscribe, so that way we can continue to grow the following and bring you the latest in cannabis news and entertainment each and every Sunday. Just joining Carlos in studio is our our political director, Gary Stein. Gary, how you doing this morning, brother?
It is so good to get out of the house. I've been kind of sequestered for the last couple of months, and bless my sweet bride and wife, Monique Zimmerman, who has been undoubtedly taxed by my being home all this time. And it just goes to show you the power of having a connection like that. So I'm blessed, and I'm blessed to be back.
Well, I'm glad you're back.
Good to have you here next to me, man. It's good to smell you. Yeah. You got that good Gary Stein smell. I don't know if it comes through the video or the audio.
I thought it was cat urine.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Gary, you are a saint in your own right for all the hard work that you put in to this chapter, and then also just being an advocate for folks and for rescuing so many cats that wind up on your doorstep. So, but that being said, folks, we are actually going to start off this show before we go into celebrating the life of Cathy Jordan. Just bring you the latest in news, and then we're going to go into the memorial portion of our show. So, Carlos, why don't you roll that beautiful news footage? So at the top of the news hour, we're going to talk about NORML has submitted its public comments to the DEA calling for the removal of cannabis from Schedule 1. If you yourself have something to say, if you want to make comments on the rescheduling of cannabis to the Drug Enforcement Administration, you actually have the ability to submit public comments. The DEA is accepting public comments through July 22nd, which is tomorrow. NORML actually has a comment submission guide that will pre-populate your comment for you, and then you can use the template and fill in your own little spin on it. But please visit norml.org, go to the NORML comment submission guide on the homepage, and submit your comments to the Drug Enforcement Administration as to why cannabis should not be Schedule 1. Moving past the rescheduling, there's a study that has come out with data published in the Journal of Autism Research that actually says children exposed in utero to cannabis possess no elevated risk of suffering from autism spectrum disorder. Researchers affiliated with Emory University, Johns Hopkins, and Harvard assessed the relationship between prenatal cannabis exposure and autism in a sample of over 11,000 children. And investigators reported no link between cannabis exposure and autism after controlling for relevant covariates like tobacco consumption. They concluded that in a large sample measuring autism traits continuously, there's no evidence that prenatal exposure puts anyone at risk for autism. So, oftentimes we hear, what about the children when it comes to cannabis prohibition? And time again, each and every week, we're seeing more and more studies coming out that, of course, confirm what we already knew. Cannabis has medicinal benefits and is not this harmful, dangerous drug that the 70s and 80s purported to continue to push. A new survey with data published in the Journal of Cannabis Research actually shows patients say cannabis effectively treats their muscular skeletal pain. And, for folks who are suffering from chronic debilitating conditions that come with that type of pain, cannabis is clearly providing relief. More than 57% of patients perceive cannabis to be more effective than other analgesic medications, and 40% acknowledge decreasing their traditional pain medications following their use of cannabis.
Instagram isn't posting.
So moving past, the issue of cannabis and pain, data recently published in the journal Cannabis, actually coming out of Fort Myers, investigators showed with Florida Gulf Coast University assessing the short-term effects of cannabis on symptoms of anxiety and depression in a cohort of 418 subjects. Participants self-administered cannabis at home and reported symptom changes in real time on a mobile software application. Researchers evaluated the data from close to 10,000 sessions, and consumers report clearly improvements in anxiety and depression following cannabis use. So not only is it helping with physical health, but also mental health. And on the topic of mental health, recent meta-analysis data published in the journal Nature Mental Health show that cannabis consumption rarely triggers episodes of acute psychosis in those people who do not have a pre-existing psychiatric disorder. Some of the information coming out of Europe has had a lot of reefer madness around cannabis-induced psychosis. And the fact is that an international team of researchers from Switzerland and the UK have reviewed the relationship between marijuana use and cannabis-associated psychotic symptoms in over 162 studies involving over 210,000 cannabis consumers. And researchers have reported the risk of psychosis appears to be most amplified in vulnerable individuals, particularly those with pre-existing mental health problems such as bipolar disorder. By contrast, they acknowledge neither young age of onset of cannabis use nor high frequency use of cannabis or the preferred type of cannabis strains were associated with the psychosis. Overall, they estimated that 0.5% of those who consume cannabis may even experience a psychotic episode during their lifetime. And this percentage mirrors the estimates published in a prior study involving over 233,000 European marijuana consumers. Authors conclude the rates of cannabis-induced psychosis observed here are comparable to rates of other drug-induced psychosis, such as alcohol-related psychosis, which is usually around 0.4 to 0.7%. And these studies clearly push back against the claims that marijuana exposure and high-potency marijuana frequently trigger psychosis and other mental health disorders, as we've seen people claim in front of the Florida legislature. That being said, moving on, to where we're at right now, Normal is actually looking for interns. And so right now we have some great summer interns. And if you have a college student or a recent graduate interested in doing consumer advocacy work, interested in ending prohibition, by all means, go to normal.org, reach out to us, and you can intern in our national office in Washington, D.C. And then lastly, wrapping it up with some Florida news, Florida has some of the toughest possession laws in the country. For those who don't know, possession of 20 grams or less of marijuana is a first-degree misdemeanor, which can be punished by up to a year in prison. However, having any more than 20 grams is a felony, and having any amount of concentrate is a felony. So to put that in perspective, someone with 22 grams of marijuana or someone with 22 pounds of marijuana both face the same charge of a third-degree felony, which carries a prison sentence up to 5 years. Florida's Amendment 3, which is actually on the ballot this fall, will change those possession limits. 3 ounces or less will no longer be considered a crime, and 5 grams or less of concentrate will no longer be considered a crime. So those of you who do not have medical cards, if you get caught with just a pack of old melted gummy bears in your car or a vape pen, you do face the risk of felony charges. So again, Amendment 3 is something that a lot of folks have questions on. They're not sure exactly what it's going to do. So we at Suncoast NORML, along with our partners at the Florida Cannabis Action Network, medical marijuana awareness webinars, and Minorities for Medical Marijuana, are going to be co-hosting an Amendment 3 virtual town hall Tuesday, August 6th from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. You can watch live over all of our social media channels at Suncoast NORML, whether it's Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Also, you should be able we're going to be working with our partners to stream it on their channels, much like we do an episode of The Rotation. It is free and open to the public. Public comments are welcome. So just as you watch an episode here and you tune in and make your comments across the various channels, you have the ability to tune in and make your comments, ask your questions about Amendment 3 at the town hall. So I'm pretty excited for that. By all means, please, again, on today's episode and future episodes of The Rotation, like, share, and subscribe. And if you're interested in getting involved in cannabis activism, just right here, you can scan that QR code and become a member of Suncoast NORML today. And that's the NORML news.
Now, I just wanted to bring up a couple things because, in fact, I was a bit late today because I decided to go ahead and travel the 45 some odd miles from home to get here. And there's always something that happens in the Florida expressways because we got a bunch of crazy drivers out there. But first off, I wanted to mention the fact that, I was stuck in the house for quite a few months, in part because of a broken ankle. And so I had to sit home, try to figure out what I was going to do with myself. And I went hog wild on Temu. But but the good news is for that is I got Carlos a gift.
Oh,
Yes, it is a genuine.
I love gifts.
It's a genuine towel that has Amanita mascara on it for the kitchen, because you have to have one of these because Amanita. Hey.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Now, in regards to the news, as far as the pain is concerned, I can tell you that they tried to make me take opioids after surgery. They knew I was going to be on a long stretch as far as a repair is concerned. Yeah, I did not. I went straight with cannabis use for my pain medication, and it worked. I never had to touch an opioid.
This was like a real serious injury. It wasn't just like a sprained ankle, right? Like you had
I also
a couple of surgeries, right? Like I lost track of what was going on.
Yeah, I had 2 torn ligaments, including the sinus mimosa, what it was called, and I had 2 fractures and a whole bunch of other things, and 2 torn muscles. So it all kind of like went together.
Dishes with this,
and then they put a screw in my ankle, and the screw started backing itself out and kept popping out of the side of my leg. So I had to have a second surgery.
You showed up that one time with the boot.
Yeah, I had the boot. that's the Canadian version of it, and that thing was actually bad because the more you wear that boot, the more you contract your Achilles tendon. So once you start walking on it again, it hurts like all hell. So modern medicine, such as it were. But in regards to the mental aspects of what Chris was talking about before, I was reading again the essay by Mr. X, which happened to be Carl Sagan, an essay that he did anonymously about his experiences with cannabis. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that this is 1969, that cannabis had a psychomimetic, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Zeno, whoever else is on here, doctors, you can correct me if you like. But psychomimetic, which means that it mimics psychosis, but it's not psychosis, because of the fact that your mind just gets opened up to other ideas and things of that sort going in the back of your mind. And it could be seen by the untrained practitioner as a psychosis when it is not, because it is temporary and there's no addictive properties. There's no lingering situation in regards to the brain chemistry is concerned. So that is what we have to stand with that. And I think that this kind of like segues into what we're talking about today, because of the fact that cannabis does so much to help so many different diseases, some of which seem totally unrelated, like PTSD and Crohn's disease. Like, the list goes on and on. I could go on like more, but we need to get to this part. But the fact is, we knew what the medical benefits were before this became illegal back in the early part of the 20th century. And yet we had a prohibition set in place to prevent it, just because of the fact that we had some politicians who wanted to, number one, knock down the Hispanic workers coming up from the Mexican War, and also because of the fact that there was a lot of money involved in regards to the hemp side of it, where they didn't want to infringe on the paper industry, the upcoming gas industry, the textile industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we knew after 80 years of misinformation, this was never going to be a sprint to get this done, to get prohibition removed, at least medically. But we knew it was going to be a marathon. And a lot of the people who started working on this have passed away by now. And yet, and the torch gets passed, and it goes on and on and on. Well, we had one particular person who never ever expected to be a drug warrior in her entire life, Cathy Jordan, who was living in Newcastle, which is a small town in Delaware, which is an area where Joe Biden grew up, as a matter of fact, before he went back to Scranton. And she was working as a bartender during the day, during the night, and a hairdresser during the day. And in fact, she actually took care of the hair of Joe Biden's first wife as he was getting ready to go to senator. And when she met him, she said, "It's nice to meet you, Mr. President." He said, "Whoa, President, I haven't even gotten to be senator yet." But she had a feeling when she saw him. But that was Cathy. She intimately had an idea in her head that she didn't have a filter to be able to block it, of course, because she told everybody exactly how she felt. And she told Joe Biden to his face that he was to be president one day back in 19, whatever it was, 81, 82. And it came to pass. But it just so happens that in 1986, she suddenly, when she was working on a float for a parade, while she and Bob were working on it, her hand locked up. And after intensive testing, they found out that she had ALS. And they said, "You need to get your affairs in order, because by 1991, you will no longer be with us." And of course, Cathy, being the fiery individual that she was, the first thing she did was basic denial and anger, and she fought against it. But eventually she came to the realization this was going to be her fate. But she decided to come, as Cathy would do, made a decision that she was not going to pass away like this. So she went and made a date to go ahead and come to Florida, to Manatee Beach, and visit a friend of hers who happened to be a nurse. And she came down here telling everybody she was just going to visit her friend. But in fact, she was going to the warm weather of Florida because in Newcastle, it was cold. It's cold in Delaware. I think, Chris, you've been around Delaware. You know how cold it can get up there.
Yeah, the tide water can get really cold, especially in the wintertime. Florida is definitely a blessing for folks suffering from any type of illness, just to get some warm weather in the fall and winter months.
The Chesapeake Bay has no mercy, seriously. But the point was, she was going to save up her muscle relaxants when in the warm Florida sun. And what she was going to do after she got home, after saving up the muscle relaxants she was told she had to take every day, is to come back to Delaware and commit suicide at that point in time. But Providence intervened, and her friend gave her a hit of this cannabis that she had gotten called Mayaca Gold, which was grown in the swamps off of the eddies of Mayaca River by a gentleman by the name of Donnie Clark, who is still around, by the way, after having served almost 30 years in federal prison for growing this stuff. And he had a very interesting attitude towards it, as it being a fantastic product. He wanted to make certain it was the best. He actually took all the seeds out and the stems out when he sold it, and he actually hermetically sealed it and put it away. So there was tons of it left over, even after he was in prison for a long time. And he was in prison when Cathy came down to Florida and took a hit of this. And all of a sudden, those vibrations in her arms that were so typical of ALS, all of a sudden stopped. And what's more is all of a sudden she was hungry for the first time in a long time. She had already started wasting. 3 years of this disease had already started taking its toll on her. But suddenly she realized there was another way, but that there was a way to treat this so that she could go on living a good life. And the disease reversed itself for a while. And so she decided she would sneak some home. She took some of the stuff in a cigar tube and stuck it in her bra, and went through TSA, which was not TSA yet, and showed Bob, and he said, "Wow, you're going to get us arrested." That was his first thought, but she went on, and she worked with Bob. She worked with him in his union stuff, and then they decided to come down to Florida so she can get more access to the thing that she knew would save her life. And we have been blessed by her being here all these years. And we're going to go into all the other history of what happened with all the guests that we have here today, and give us a clue as to what exactly, who exactly Cathy Jordan was. She even said herself, she is a unicorn. Now, in the business world, the unicorn is the perfect fit for a job because there's only one somewhere. And she felt she was it. She felt she was essentially given a permission from God to fight this. And so she did. And believe me, she was one hell of a fighter.
Indeed. And Gary, you learned a lot about Cathy's story through the book that you had been writing, The Great Green Hope. And so, I found that excerpt from your chapter about Cathy just illuminating, and just reading her story and learning so much, more about her background. I've known Cathy now for, I would say, since 2014. And the first time I saw her in the state capitol, in a motorized wheelchair, but still, willing to get up there and speak publicly, on such important topics and an important issue as ending prohibition, making sure medical patients have safe access, and not taking no shit from politicians. And I'll never forget when I ran for state house in 2018. I was working full time. I was, recently married. I wasn't sure if I could, even continue on the race, doing what I was doing. And I never forget being at an event in like, I believe it was Sarasota, and just Cathy pulling me to the side as she was getting in her van and saying, "You know what? We need people like you up there. And don't you give up, and don't you quit. Even if you don't win this time, you keep going, you keep fighting." And that still sticks with me to this day, because she, despite all the setbacks that she had experienced physically, her spirit was never dampened, and she was someone who inspired others. And so on that note, we're going to start off this show and this memorial with just some happy memories of Cathy that Carlos has put in a montage. And then we're going to bring on the activist family and friends who remember her so fondly to talk a little bit and celebrate her life. So Carlos, why don't you roll that beautiful footage?
Here's one thing I want to say about Cathy. From all the times I've ever experienced her, we get into this whole thing about, it's sad that she's dead, and but of all the times I've ever experienced her, she had a big smile on her face, and she was a happy lady. And when we first opened our chapter, we held what was called, I played this video the last time, but we held what was called the Spring Leaf Freedom Festival, and Cathy came and hit probably the biggest blunt that ever existed, and we can share that experience right now.
Do you love that Mary Jane? Make some noise if you love that girl. Oh, come on, tell me, do you think you love that Mary Jane? I think I do. You know why? Because I smoke 2 joints in the morning, I smoke 2 joints in the night, I smoke 2 joints in the afternoon. It make a Rasta man feel alright. I smoke 2 joints in a time of peace, smoke 2 joints and watch the war. I smoke 2 joints.
And that's the thing. She was a happy lady, and I think it's we have a really cool show today because you're gonna get just a crazy amount of activists. And if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to introduce the first guest on.
For sure. I do want to say one thing before we move on to the guest.
Yeah.
Gary mentioned about Cathy being no longer with us, but the truth is that she was gone essentially when they initially diagnosed her. And I look at it as we were blessed to have an angel on earth with us this whole time since that diagnosis. And I think that's the most important thing to remember, is that being able to have her here from the other side this whole time to inspire all of us. And so as we go into the folks who are going to mention her the most fondly, I just wanted everybody to realize that when you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, you're pretty much already gone. And the fact that the time that you do have here is precious and limited, and that she lived the most of it and made the most of it, despite the fact that she could have just easily retired and not done anything and just lived her life. But she chose a different path, and she chose to inspire others to fight and to be better. And so with that, Carlos, let's bring on our first guest.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to call Cathy the patron saint of medical cannabis, I'd like to reserve the right to call this lady the godmother of medical cannabis in Florida. We had a few issues with some stuff just fell. But we had a few issues with your mics earlier today. Can you hear me, Jody?
I think my wonderful tech husband has us set and ready. Are we good?
Okay. Yeah, you sound awesome. Jody, I mean, I definitely, you got a certain amount of time. Go ahead, share what you got to share about Cathy.
Well, something struck me a second ago about how Cathy could have quit and retired. And I think that maybe we should take a minute and go through all of the times that Cathy could have quit. So Cathy came to Florida, and she found that she had access to the right medicine, the one that helped her disease. And she was able to quietly live until the folks who are in charge of the ALS Foundation told her that if a cure for ALS was found, that she wouldn't be eligible for it because of her illegal drug use. Now, you've all heard that her illegal drug use is the only thing that was keeping her alive. And if you haven't heard that clearly, we'll say it again. It was the only thing keeping her alive. When Cathy Jordan got up in the morning, she certainly cared about making sure that people who were diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease knew about cannabis. She lived for that. She went to ALS meetings, local meetings, to make sure that ALS patients knew that they had hope, because hope is that really the difference. When you've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, the difference is hope. And as we were hearing from Chris on some of the mental health studies, it helps to elevate your mental health. And one of the things that cannabis did for Cathy was help to give her a more positive attitude. So she could have quit when she had access to the medicine that was saving her, but she didn't. She went on and she reached out to other ALS patients, other patients with neuromuscular disorders, and these neurological disorders like Parkinson's, traumas that were taking place in athletes. She had an entire program of reaching out to athletes, particularly pro football players, because she knew the damage that they were taking every day, and she knew what a neuroprotectant like cannabis could do. So while she could have just saved her own life, she felt that it was important to make sure that Florida had access to medical marijuana and that all Floridians had access. When she called me in 2011 and said, Jody, I want to reorganize the Florida Cannabis Action Network. Will you jump into the deep end of the pool with me? I said, no. She didn't swim. when you jump into the deep end of the pool with Cathy, you know who's going to be doing the work. But it turned out that that wasn't so. She had been a founding member of Cannabis Action Network. She had been a club president of Florida Cannabis Action Network. And she had a vision for what Florida Cannabis Action Network was going to do. In 2014, she helped bring together the players that introduced the low THC bill. We didn't love that. It wasn't enough. She didn't stop. She went back the next year and got the right to try. Even though Amendment 2 passed, Floridians like Cathy, who had a terminal illness, had the right to try. But she didn't stop. So even though she had access to the medicine she needed in 2013, her home was raided. And in the midst of the legal rigmarole that follows, the court in Manatee County determined that Florida recognized Cathy and marijuana as a medicine of necessity for Cathy. So by 2013, Cathy knew what worked for her. Cathy was living, and Cathy had the right to grow her own cannabis, but she didn't quit. She went back in 2014 and got the right to have access to low THC to everybody, and then went back in 15 and got the right to try and got that for everyone who was like her. But she still wasn't done, because she went out and did appearance after appearance after appearance to pass Amendment 2, which gave all patients that with certain disease sets the ability to go and purchase cannabis, get a license from the state to purchase cannabis. And that's what we have as our current medical marijuana program. But don't you know, even though she's had her own garden, even though she had won the right for low THC, and she had won the right to try, and she had won the medical marijuana for everyone, she still put herself out there in 2019 to become the face of smokable cannabis. So, I think it's amazing as we talk about people and as we look at whether or not we're going to pass Amendment 3, should we do this? What about me? It doesn't give me everything I want. How about, I think at the end of the day, Cathy's example was she kept moving the ball down the field. She kept understanding that even though it wasn't necessarily about her, that getting more access to more people and more quality products in the hands of people who needed it, that was a legacy that she was going to leave, and the legacy she could get behind. I know there's lots of folks that want to talk. I have had the honor and privilege of traveling tens of thousands of miles with Cathy Jordan. So for all of the impact that she had here in the state of Florida, she was also a plaintiff in a federal, not one, but two federal lawsuits. She traveled with Americans for Safe Access to argue a court case that was actually in front of then Judge Merrick, who is now the Attorney General of the United States. She has actually been in a courtroom where her case was being heard by Judge Merrick. She has traveled to Arizona to speak, California to speak, Colorado to speak, Washington, D.C. to speak. There's great footage out there of Cathy speaking to her congressman in his office and speaking to John Micah's aide in his congressional office. And there's also pictures of Cathy with her local representatives and her local senators. And we're doing a little thing, hashtag care like Cathy. If you care like Cathy did, make sure that your local representative knows you. That's not a hard trip. You don't have to go to Washington, D.C. or even Tallahassee for that. They have an office in your community. It might be a bicycle ride. It might be a long car ride. It might be a bus ride. Somebody might have to load you up in a vehicle to get you there. But any of those things, somebody else has already done it. And if you care like Cathy did, you will make a way to get in there and let that representative know how you feel. Because the only thing that we do as humans is we do things that we care about Most often we do things for our friends. If the person who is elected in November or who retains that seat right now respects you and appreciates you and gets to the point where they will call you friend, they will do things for you. The first bill since 1978 that was introduced in the state of Florida that was pro-cannabis had Cathy Jordan's fingerprints all over it. And the Cathy Jordan Medical Cannabis Act not only had Cathy Jordan's fingerprints all over it and Cannabis Action Network's fingerprints all over it, it also had Florida Normal's fingerprints all over. So care like Cathy and get outside your comfort zone. That's what we do. If you're afraid to do it alone, join Suncoast Normal, join Florida Cannabis Action Network, because we don't need to be out there by ourselves. Educate yourself and then educate your friends, educate your lawmakers. Let's make change together, because we all hashtag care like Cathy.
Jody, I have a question for you. You mentioned in Cathy's ceremony that you guys had that you guys had a meeting like just like a few days beforehand, right?
Absolutely. I say regularly, don't let the little old lady in a wheelchair fool you. And I appreciate you guys saying she was always happy. She was not always happy. But she and Bob really played well off of each other for the 25 years that I worked closely with the two of them. Cathy and I celebrated 27 years this year. And it was fun because when one of them was up, one of them was down. And when one of them was down, the other one was fired up and ready to go.
Okay.
And through it all, we were able to work together. Cathy participated. She was president of Florida Cannabis Action Network. She remained on the Florida Cannabis Action Network board of directors. She would meet with us 2 or 3 times a week via Zoom. She would get on calls. She would actively participate. I know her favorite color, purple, because she really had some serious opinions. And I think you guys mentioned that she was really easily ready to do it. She was on her last meeting with Florida Cannabis Action Network's board on July 2nd, on our leadership team on July 2nd.
Well,
And
it
of course, she
doesn't have
passed
to
on the
be
4th.
during that meeting, but through all the correspondence that you had with Cathy, did Amendment 3 come up at all? And what was her stance? Was she excited to see legalization coming, or
She was excited to take the next step.
or
Oh, she was absolutely voting yes. So I'm
Okay.
very sad. And one of the things that the way that Cathy and I worked together was that, she would say kind of what she would tell me what she wanted to say. And I would help her figure out, the most articulate way to say it. And then she would do A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U, and voice exercises and breathing exercises so that she could articulate it, right? Because she wanted to be heard. So I said, Cathy, I want you to do a quick bit that says Amendment 2 is for me, Amendment 3 is for you. And she was like, no way. Amendment 3 is for me too. So the story that I like the best is that in May, and John Jordan told it, that is her son, who has been her full-time caregiver for the last 5 years. John and his wife, Karen, have been living there in their parish home. So for Cathy to go anywhere, you have to load her into the wheelchair, a lot of starting and stopping, forward and back. She was going to be sore for days. She insisted that John load her up in her wheelchair and take her at the end of May to the supervisor of elections office. There have been a lot of changes. And one of the things the Cannabis Action Network says is if you haven't checked your signature in the last couple of years, check it. Because as we get a little shaky or we don't put a heart over the I in our, in our name, our signatures change. And if your signature doesn't match, they can discount your ballot. So Cathy went at horrible physical pain, at horrible trouble to her son, to the supervisor of elections office there in Manatee County, to make sure that when she voted yes in November for Amendment 3, that her ex was going to count.
Well, that's fantastic. And Jody, I should say that I think it was very lucky for Cathy. She didn't even have an I in her name, so she didn't have to worry about art. Now you have an I in your name, so I know where that came from.
I
But
don't sign it with a heart. But I can't stress this enough. We've all gotten kind of lazy because you sign with a pen on the credit card or with the debit card. And that is not okay with the supervisor of elections. And I don't care how you feel about everything on the ballot. We're working with Suncoast Normal and our allies to make sure that you know who to vote for. If you are pro-cannabis, make sure that the people you vote for are as pro-cannabis as you are. And that's how we do justice to the legacy of Cathy Jordan, is we make sure that the people who go to Tallahassee and the people who go to Washington, D.C. remember the story of Cathy Jordan, know somebody locally who is their own Cathy Jordan. Because the one thing that kept me working with Cathy is because she understood that she was one of many, not the one.
okay, but just one more quick question, and then we have to go on to the next guest. But would it be fair to say that for Cathy, failure was not an ending, but merely a segue to the next fight?
I don't know that Cathy ever felt like there was a failure. You either win or you learn.
Well, there
And
are
if you
facts. Like,
win,
for instance, she actually went and talked to Jeb Bush and said, would you mind making this legal so you don't execute me? Essentially. And I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what she said to him. And he was crying. He was crying when they left her. And then when he went to the sheriff's office, and they said, well, we can get her a prescription of Marinol. He said, yeah, that's good enough. And then the first time he was asked on camera, had he ever known anybody who had been cured by cannabis, he said no.
And that fueled her fire. That caused her to dig deeper. That caused her to make more calls. So that's why I say I don't know that there were times that we got down. We weren't always winning, but we always understood that the goalpost was out there and that the truth is what we were doing. You mentioned that Cathy had a sacred knowledge. I firmly believe that there are more than a few of us who understand these plants and these sacred plants. We have to bring this knowledge forward. We have to bring it forward. And every setback is a segue. That was a great way to put it.
Well, Jody, thanks for joining us today and sharing. I appreciate you. And just wanted to say before we let you go, one thing that I'm really looking forward to this coming year is collaborating with you guys for lobbying in the Capitol. So I look forward to that and more stuff to come. Thank you.
March 5th. We have reserved March 5th.
March 5th.
In the third floor of the Capitol Rotunda to talk about all things cannabis.
First week of session.
Session starts on Tuesday. Anybody who's interested in coming in first Tuesday, we'll organize some tours on Tuesday. We'll have our Capitol Day on Wednesday, and then we'll do some select meetings on Thursday. Have some nighttime activities that are coming together, so it's gonna be fun. And if everybody votes yes on 3, not only will it be fun, it'll be legal.
Well, thank you very much, and we got to keep going because we're deep in the show already, and we're already on to our second guest. So, and our next guest, Noonie, you're one of my favorites. You presented me with an award from your Crohn's charity once, the Sweat and Tears Award, Blood, Sweat and Tears Award. It touched me so much that I cried the entire time you gave it to me. And you gave us our organization the award in the past as well. So I appreciate you. I appreciate just your personality and everything. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say about Cathy and your experiences with Cathy and how she's inspired you.
Well, for me, hi everybody. But for me, Cathy inspired me when I was lost trying to find out a medicine for my son. I'm just a mother with a son who has Crohn's disease. So when I got into Florida's politics and was invited up to the Capitol, of course, who the first person I see is Cathy. Incredible. I just watched her. I watched her. I watched what she did, and everybody told a story between Gary, the history, and Jody, and quite sure the people behind me. But my thing was, how can I tell this lady how much we thank her for being that poster, basically poster child. So shouting out about the medical benefits of the plant. That's what she did, and I felt that my foundation should uh, at least say thank you through her blood, sweat, and her tears for all that she does. She pumps up those who are tired. You look at her, you got a blast of energy back inside of you. So, I believe that Cathy knew that the plant would help regain and sustain a normal life. And with that said, I felt that giving the Blood, Sweat, and Tears Awards to her, and when I did do it in St. Pete at a fundraiser for her, she didn't know. Nobody knew. And when I finally handed to her, she was just so overwhelmed, and she just said, "It's beautiful." Something I basically like what you said, but um, to me, I felt that at least she got her flowers while she was alive, and the award expresses what she does, um, and have done all the way to her dying breath. So that's my part, is to make sure that we can say thank you, and she can know we said thank you. And I mean, everything else is just follow the leader. Crohn's Foundation, follow the leader. Follow the leader. She go into a room, I'm going into the room. So it's basically that was it. So my story is not as intense as everybody else, other than saying thank you, thank you, thank you again. We can't thank you enough. And I hope that's what she brought transitioning over, to know that all of us loved her dearly.
Well, I thank you for coming on today. Thanks for keeping it short and sweet. That Blood, Sweat, and Tears award, it really, it really helps a lot of people in this movement. I think there's not a lot of people that are trying to show appreciation for what we've done. So when I found out that you gave her the first one, that
Gary too. Gary right next to you.
Yeah,
He's
Gary,
the first one.
who I thought I saw on a post that Cathy got the first one. How'd that work? Gary got the first one?
Cathy, Gary, Barry Gordon, he'll be on, he'll talk. It's a bunch of them. Okay. I slapped it out, the first ones. And Joe. Oh yeah. Joe. Yeah, right.
I handed the award to Joe for you.
Exactly. Man, it was a whole list. It was power hitters, all power hitters.
Well, Noonie, thanks again. We're gonna go ahead and move on. Next up, we have Mariah Barnhart, who hopefully, there you go. Hi, Mariah.
Hi.
How you doing? We've had Mariah on the show a number of different times. You've come on to help with Canavines and talk about Canna Moms and Wise Warriors and all that. We've always appreciated you. You're a friend of the show. You have inspired so many. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to be weird because you've inspired so many people in this movement yourself. So I want to just take a moment. Let's see how Cathy inspired you.
Well, so I think that's kind of the point of, I know this show is focused on cannabis and much of Cathy's public life was focused on cannabis. So starting off there, some things Jody already touched on. She was very much, there's room for everyone, very welcoming. Really, I thought laid the groundwork for that cooperation over competition type of mentality we had been trying to integrate for so many years now. I think that really started with her, and her heart was so unlike anyone else's. She really was unselfish when things were okay for her. She still understood that they weren't okay for other people, or that doing things under the radar and finding loopholes, even if we could or we had friends and connections, not everyone did. And I think what an inspirational lesson at the very beginning, knowing that that's where we were headed and that there were people like that at the helm. Obviously, that she outlived her neurologist who had given her such limited hope, that she lived for decades with this plant, makes it such an important part of her story and makes her such an important spokesperson for the plant itself and the cause. I think she was one of the first people I met in Florida. She honestly was one of the earliest people I met in cannabis in Florida, period. But one of the first and few people, even since over the last 11 or 12 years, who really not just understood the strategy behind bringing the mothers out into the forefront, into the spotlight, etc., but she really valued it. She was one of the very few people who I think really found that to be a significant piece of the puzzle. And lo and behold, she's a mother herself, right? And so I think the statement, or what's already been touched on here, is that her son and his wife, in these last few years, giving up their businesses, moving in with her at this last phase of her life and this transitional phase here, knowing that she had that love. What a statement. As a mother myself, there can be no greater statement, and there is no way any of us would rather die than knowing that the love of our children is there with us. So obviously, as an extraordinary spokesperson for cannabis, it's just so important to remember that she was such an amazing human being overall. She was unselfish. She was her sense of humor, she just brought so much laughter and a sense of peace to everybody who was close to her. Anybody who shared space with her would have felt that. And I think above and beyond everything else is her love. She genuinely loved, and that cooperation over competition, that sense of unselfishness, that fight that never ended, the passion that continued, all of that was born from the love that she had. She was full of love, and there can be no greater inspiration.
Yeah, Cathy had an aura about her that was energizing. Whenever you talk to her, even when her voice was at its weakest, it still struck home.
Well, and what a statement, Gary. I have said this many times over many years, but more particularly in recent calls with her and her son, etc., that for somebody who really was limited in their speech due to something as grave as ALS, she said more than most anyone.
And she had a interesting opinion of herself in regards to what her purpose was in life and how she works on things. My wife, when she met her for the first time, said, my wife is blind. She said, "I'm sorry, I can't see you to shake your hand." And she said, "I'm sorry, my hand won't shake your hand." and they both laughed for a while. That was Cathy too.
Well, thank you very much, Mariah. You got anything else you want to share?
Don't make it weird, Carlos.
Nothing else? Anything at all?
I love you, Dr. Barry. Hi. Welcome.
Thanks, Mariah. Dr. Gordon is my favorite doctor. Fan of the show.
You know what? Thanks, Carlos.
You made it here from the comments section to honestly, I'm kind of upset that we haven't had you on earlier. You're a wonderful expert. And there was a point in time, I'm not sure if it's still going on, but you had like more medical marijuana patients than any other doctor in the state of Florida. Is that still going on, or that was?
No, I think early on, and I
You've
really
calmed down
credit
a little.
early on, I credit my Jewish mother for teaching me if you're going to be tip of the spear, you better stay pretty damn sharp. So a decision that I made was really not to expand to be that 15 center guy, if that makes sense, but to try to focus on my clinic, make it the best I could, and kind of dive into the advocacy part, pay attention to things. I was honored to sit on the Nikki Fried State Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee, and things like that.
You're a hell of an advocate.
No, I know all you guys, and just to write back at you, Carlos. Yes, I am a fan of show. You guys are one of the very few. I like to think I have one of the others. Just to give a shout out to the green room on Thursday mornings. We call it intelligent cannabis talk, and we need more of it. We need it to be a continuous part of this, campaign season, as we all want to fight the misinformation and make sure that we're remembering the patients, of course, as we segue into what's obvious about, why we're all here today, which is to honor Cathy, who, of course, was absolutely the patron saint of, cannabis here in the state of Florida. We all have our story. And, mine was as an emergency medicine physician for a number of years who once in a while saw an ALS patient. But, typically most ALS patients stay out of the ER because that would be kind of the end for them. And I think most ALS patients, have that well planned before to, be in their home environment, or a much more comfortable environment than the ER. But, when I came to Florida and opened up my clinic, guys, believe it or not, all the way back in January of 17, which is crazy. So the years do go by, and knew nothing, of course, about cannabis as medicine. But I knew that societally, I'd never seen a cannabis patient in my years of emergency medicine. But, I had heard of a gal by the name of Cathy Jordan and her story. But Jim was so honored and blessed to meet her and Bob. I think my first time in Tallahassee, I think it was the time when Jimmy Johnson, friend of show as well, and many of us hung the banner, I think from the second floor of the rotunda. And Cathy was there with Bob, and I had a chance to meet them. And listen, when you meet Cathy Jordan and you're, getting involved in the medical cannabis space or the cannabis space, you feel like you have that warm blanket wrapped around you. And, just meeting Cathy and having the honor of speaking with her and Bob many times. My best memory and joyous memory, and I'm not going to take much time, was the night that we had the Reefer Madness in Sarasota. Players. It was great. And we had a benefit that night sponsored by Compassionate Cannabis Clinic, my clinic. Sean Shaw was there, Bob and Cathy Jordan, many others. Great night. And Cathy was joyously there, and I think really enjoyed it. Mariah mentioned it, and she's a great example of it. I want to give a huge shout out to the caregivers. And Bob through the years, of course, and now, John and his wife. I always took time in the ER to remember the caregivers and to, give a hand out to them because they truly are just, saints on earth. And there is a joy, as Mariah said, in being able to give and share that love with your loved one up until the day that you're gone. Also, I just kind of wanted to, I know it's Cathy's, remembrance, but remember a couple others, be it, Bobby Tuna or Bill Monroe or Jenny Perdomo or, Colby Wise, recently pediatrics, Sebastian Cote's son, Jagger, and
really that many people.
Paige Figgy. So they have a grandmother up there now, with Cathy and someone to ride, to ride up on the bus with. And, that, of course, Matt Morgan just passed as well, another one who was integral in cannabis here in Florida. But thanks so much for giving me the honor of speaking today. And, I like to say that Cathy and many others got that ball to the 50-yard line. Being a sports fan as I am, I'd like to think I picked the ball up at the 50-yard line. We're still running hard, towards the goal line. We got a long way to go. And of course, Amendment 3 is a part of it. And, I'll come back on the show sometime and talk about that because it's important. We got to remember the patients, of course. And just one last shout out about research. And if there's another thing going on besides Amendment 3 in Florida, it's the federal Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Chris, thank you so much. And I do love the rotation, guys. You do a fantastic job. And thank you so much, Kano. And I mean it, for every week bringing up those studies and that research. And I think I should probably do a little bit more on my show too, but we get too involved in our political talk. But thank you for that. If Cathy is an example of what we all know we want and need, it's more research on the cannabinoids, on the terpenes, on the flavonoids, on all of it. And we can't let big pharma get involved and get in the way, and or insurance companies. So there's a lot of moving parts. And thanks to Cathy for inspiring us all.
Actually, I would be amiss if I did not mention the fact that something that you and I have talked about is that whether or not you want to vote yes or no for Amendment 3, do not get rid of your medical card. We need to make certain that the medical program stays intact. Too many other states, when they have gone legal, have cannibalized their medical program to the deficit of the patient. And if we're going to continue to be patient-centric, to make certain that they get medicine without being taxed up the wazoo, and you've ever been taxed up the wazoo, you know how much that hurts.
I have.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to make certain that the medical program stays intact, and we at Suncoast Normal are dedicated to that as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Dr. Gordon, I hate to switch shift from medical to talking about smoking the ganj, but I'm actually curious, from the people that I'm sure Jody had smoked weed with Cathy before. Have you ever smoked with Cathy?
You know what? I love that huge joint picture. I missed that opportunity, but yeah, I think it probably was the night of the Reefer Madness evening. Might have been one night that I had that distinct pleasure.
Oh, really? What was that like?
Listen, to me, once again, it was just an honor to be around Cathy, always, and to lean in and have her, whisper in your ear, especially that night. There was such joy in the room and a lot of, hubbub and things around. Bob, I've been able to maintain a relationship with, even though he's been up in Maine. And I don't know, to me, they're just kind of my grandparents down here, when it comes to Florida. And I have one of my sisters in the frame, here as well. And you guys are all brothers. And listen, I've said it from the get-go. When the power and the money is on that side, we as the cannabis community have to pull on the rope together. And I've always said that. And, to me, I think that's why and when we win. And these are such complicated times. That was the joy of Cathy's Memorial Day a week ago today. It was the day after President Trump, or former President Trump, cut his ear. That's too political. I'm kidding. Not one mention of politics in that entire day.
All right.
And no, seriously. And that's the joy of it. We stay green. We stay in the middle. We say we're all going to get together at the end and smoke the peace pipe so we can keep this country together.
Great. Our next guest is somebody who I think, when I talk about an aura, has an aura of empathy that comes from so deep inside that it exudes to else. And
before we introduce her, bye, Dr. Gordon. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're very excited. I'm excited to have Josephine on the show as well. So, and one thing that's really cool, I'll let you get into your intro there, but one thing that's really cool is there was an event years ago when me and Kano were doing the rotation in my garage, where Josephine runs up to us and she's like, "I love the rotation." And so long time fan of the show, long time fan of the show, and I am a fan of yours as well. And go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry.
Well, you took all my
I'm gonna
wind out of my sails. I've got like no wind left.
I'm gonna put the camera on you, and you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Jill and I met, and when I was up to Tallahassee, and I saw her blood pressure rise to the point where you could see steam coming off the top of her head. And I said, "This is somebody who's passionate. I got to meet this person." And in fact, you have worked with hospice for many years as a hospice nurse, and I worked for Centers for Disease Control. And when I was working in HIV, I was constantly taking folks from their first positive test to the end day. And I said to myself, I don't know how much more I can handle of this. I don't think that I can handle it, but you do that, and you do that well. And I am totally in awe of your power, your superpower. But I'm certain that your empathy magnet attracted Cathy as much as her empathy attracted you. Is that fair to say?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Cathy really, I mean, she had a huge impact on my life personally and professionally. I met Cathy and Jody up at the Capitol 2014 when the low THC bill was introduced. Both of them, Cathy especially, helped me find my voice. Back in those early days, my blood pressure literally would go up. Cathy helped me to learn how to present my message strategically so that it would be received and heard, and less emotionally, which was of great value. It was an honor to work beside her and chase behind her. She would call Jody and I her 1-2 punch, because we would just kind of go in there and, you get a certain amount of time to testify. So we made sure that the message that we wanted to get across and we took great planning. And Gary, you've been in on planning sessions prior to going into committee. One of my favorite things about Cathy is I have a tendency to like to hide behind my hair. And after we would do our strategy session, I was walking out the door and we were going to meet up in the morning. She'd always, ask me to bend down, and she'd say, okay, now remember to wear your hair up in a bun so they can see your face, because you look so smart that way. So she would inspire me even, to kind of, believe it or not, come out of my shell, because I actually do have one. And she just had such a soft and gentle spirit, but she had a fire in her eyes that was palpable. And, as much as I said it at the celebration of her life, as much as I'm going to miss her choosing to gain independence from her body on Independence Day was so poignant to me, because I said to Jody, I was like, she was a true firecracker of a friend. And when we were at the celebration and I was up on the stage and I was looking out at everybody, it was amazing to me how many people she brought together. Like Mariah said, she just exuded this love about her, and there was no division, and there was no exclusivity. It was like, if you were aligned with this mission, in her eyes, you had a place, because we all came together like a human entourage, each with our own skills and talents, because she knew we could do so much more together than we can apart. And it's just been an honor and a privilege, honestly.
I can't tell you how many times we went to participate in the talks to the various committees, and you had decided ahead of time you weren't really certain you wanted to talk, but after everybody already had all their slips in and we're all sitting down, all of a sudden you hear something and you start scribbling and you say, quick, get this to the sergeant at arms, I gotta talk.
Every time, every committee, that's kind of like the joke. It's like every committee I would go in and I'd say, I'm not talking today, and then sure enough, somebody would say something, and it was just like I couldn't not talk.
Well, I have a feeling that was like Cathy's fire inside of you, which suddenly got lit, like the pilot just got lit. When you heard something that you said, "Oh no, that ain't happening."
Yeah. Yeah. And I miss those early days. We did seem to be more cohesive, and the schism is something that makes me a little sad. But again, coming together at Cathy's celebration, there were just all faces that I've seen in different venues and for the past decade, and it was really nice. It was really nice. And thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to have a few minutes to celebrate our friend Cathy. She really, I'll say it all the time, Floridians owe her a great debt of gratitude, because she is who brought flower to Florida. She gave us safe and legal access to the whole plant.
Yeah, they had 3 actual defendants, and then the first 2 they decided didn't have good enough standing. But when they thought that standing, they thought Cathy, and that is and she pulled it through when others had fallen off.
Yeah,
and we're grateful to that. It was a heck of a trial.
It was a heck of a trial.
Well, Josephine, thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate you, and you keep it real. What else can I say?
Peace out.
So, our last guest today, we had Arnold was coming on, but unfortunately, he's having computer issues. He gave a really big, really nice speech at the Cathy Jordan Memorial, but unfortunately, maybe we can have him on a later date. But I think Gary should introduce our next guest.
Okay, well, Bob is a very enigmatic character in Cathy's life. They'd known each other since they were kids back in 1966, and they smoked the joints a couple here and there, and they were friends. And Bob had a friend named Michael, and Michael ended up marrying Cathy, and Bob ended up marrying somebody else, and then moving off to Pennsylvania. In the meantime, Michael and Cathy split, and then she got together with this guy named Larry, and she fired him too. And then it just so happened that Bob had to come back over to Newcastle to get a kidney stone taken care of. And it just so happened that somebody else was there also going to get a kidney stone, who wanted Cathy to get back together with Bob. So they met for drinks and they got married. And 40 years later, they were still together. And I got to tell you, as somebody, 4 years into their relationship, that's when the ALS struck. And Bob never left her side at that point in time, or is going on for decades after that. As somebody who is married to a person with a disability, life is not always easy. You have to be determined and you have to be loving. And I think Bob was about as loving as you could possibly get for Cathy. And it's exactly what she needed, because they gave each other strength in so many instances. Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see you right now.
We can't see.
No, my camera's broken. I'm technically older, so I'm going to turn the camera on.
There we go.
There you go.
So Bob, go ahead. The floor is yours, man. You got some time to talk about Cathy.
Well, it's a lot of really nice things have been said, and I agree with all of them. But I saw the, most everybody saw the public side, and Jody referred to it. She wasn't always happy, but I'll tell you what, there was nobody I ever met in my life that was more determined. And it was how it worked. It was sometimes she'd be down, and I'd say, "Come on, hon, come on, let's make some phone calls. Let's do something, right?" And other times I'd be down. She said, "No, we're not giving up." We did pull one another along pretty much. And she was, is an amazing woman. And what happened with, I took care of her for a long time. And, but it all started back in, like Gary just said, back in the 60s. And a guy named Mike, she was dating him, and he had a cool car, and she was a cheerleader. He had I remember meeting her and had a rabbit fur jacket on, and I had a leather jacket and 2 cans of Budweiser in my pockets, and I was a hoodlum, and we always got along. And then as time progressed, she married Mike, and we were always friends. And it got to the point where we would we'd go camping together, and it ended up me and her always taking the kids to the playground, and my wife would be sleeping and her husband would be, anyhow, it ended up so we always spent time together. And then as time went on, her first husband, Mike, got he got addicted to drugs, and she would say, I need some money for the power or something like that. And I'd give it to her, but I wouldn't give it to him. And, are you going to go over and see your boyfriend, Whitey? That's my AKA. And so it got to the point where she went her way, and they got divorced. She went her way. I went my way. And then, like I said, I was in the hospital with kidney stones, and her mother was in the hospital with kidney stones. And a friend of hers saying, look, Bob Jordan's at the hospital. Why don't you stop in and see him? So she come in and see me, and we were both single. So we went out and had drinks, and the rest is history, But as far as her determination goes, I've never met anybody a singleness of purpose that she had, and she didn't do it for herself. It was never about her. It was about helping other people, And I've seen her so dog tired and wore out and sick and not feeling like doing much, and give her time to people that. And then what happened, I saw the recovery part. She didn't show what it took out of her. And she was always careful about that, always dressed nice and all that stuff, and showed the good side. But I saw the other side, and which is even more amazing, to make her go back up and do it again, get up and do it again. We've been with Jody for years, and it all started. It all started when she, like Gary said, went down to Florida, and she smoked that Mac of gold, and she came home, and she said that her disease had stopped. And I said, well, what do you mean your disease has stopped? I picked her up at the Philadelphia airport, and she had a vial, like a glass cigar tube between her boobs, and said, full of pot. I said, get this. I said, what are you, nuts? We're going to jail. I mean, at that time, it was a big bust. You know what I mean? And she said, this is my medicine. And I thought to myself, well, okay, look, man, if I was 36 years old and got 3 to 5 years to live, and I thought someone would help me, let her. Okay, so I went along with it, and lo and behold, she started getting better. Her speech improved, and whatever would take like months for her to decline would now take years. So we knew there was something to it, but now here's the part that a lot of people don't know, is that we would go to neurologists, and neurologists would say to us, look, I don't, what the first guy say? Oh, you're using cannabis. Yeah, because she asked the assistant to leave, and it was just her, the doctor, and myself. He said, well, I'm using cannabis to stop my disease. And he went, oh, well, I'm not going to give you any. I'm not going to give you a prescription for that. It's illegal. But I'll tell you this: whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. So I mean, we knew this for quite some time, and now she outlived a lot of her neurologists and things like that. But her main thing really was to help other people, and she knew, and I knew. There's no when I got busted for growing the plants and all that stuff, and they turned around and they want to put me in jail for 23 marijuana plants, and that's when Morgan jumped on, and a lot of people we got very well known during that time, but they wanted to give me a plea deal, which was be a good boy for a year, drug testing for a year, keep your mouth shut, and then maybe we'll let you off the hook. And I said, I don't want your plea deal. They said, what? What do you mean you don't? We got your plants, we got you red-handed. And I said, well, if you can put me in jail, then do it. And I knew in my heart of hearts, because at that time, let's see, Norm Kent and another lawyer told me, said, look, Bob, you can lose this. They were representing us. And I said, I don't care. I knew in my heart of hearts that because the grow was too small to be commercial, it had to be for personal use. I took a drug test and tested negative, so I wasn't using it. She was using the cannabis. I got the medical records, and one of the things that she did when we first got to Florida in I think it was 91, and we went to a neurologist. Now she was using cannabis at that time, and he said, "What's your medical?" What? And she put down 1.5 Klonopin and 2 marijuana cigarettes. And I said, "Don't say that. We don't tell anybody about what we're doing, right? You know what I mean?" And lo and behold, that saved us later on, because she never hid the fact from any doctor what she was doing. And they had no at that time. Since then, I mean, we learned about the endocannabinoid system and there's been a lot more research, but I truly believe if they can let us study this plant, and Big Pharma could jump on board without being negative to us, that someday they'll be able to take you, you'll have an ailment, and they'll give you a blood test, and they'll be able to grow a plant just for you. That's how universal I think this thing is, because it helps so many people in so many ways. I mean, we had people come to the house that you name it, because like I said, we got pretty well known. And then I used to say to her, Cat, man, we're not going to get busted for pot. We're going to get busted for practicing medicine without a license because we help so many people. And that's when I really became convinced of the properties of the plant, that there's so much to it that we don't know. All we've been lied to the last 80 years, about but I think it's a very powerful medicine. I think I know for a fact that they'd say, well, how does it work? I don't know how it works. But all I can tell you right now is when she had it, she was better. When she didn't have it, if we ran into a dry spell, then what would happen? Her disease would start coming back. And that was just, so that convinced me beyond a shadow of a doubt that it truly is a powerful medicine. And it just happened to be that when she went down there and she was visiting a friend, and they went out on the beach and they smoked the Mac of Gold, that she came home and she said, I felt my disease stop. Oh, come on, man. I said, okay. And then you can't make this stuff up. Donnie Clark got a life in prison for growing pot in Mac. It was the Mac of Gold gang, they called it. And anyhow, he was supposed to be the ringleader. And then he was still in prison when we got to Florida. And we were working trying to get him out, and Clinton commuted his sentence, but he didn't pardon him. So I've got this idea that this guy Donnie Clark is, I don't know, a gangster, and all this thing. And we had a chance to meet him. This is how our life goes. A friend came down to visit with Cathy from North Carolina. She had an issue. She ended up in the hospital. Now, while she was in the hospital, she knew nobody in Florida except us. But the woman in the hospital, she was telling about Cathy, how Cathy had smoked this mac of gold, and this guy, Donnie Clark, had grown it, and it saved Cathy's life. And the woman never said a word. When she started to leave, she said, you think Cathy like a visit from Donnie Clark? And Jean Marlowe said, sure, I'm sure she would. She said, I'm his aunt. I'll see to it. Wow. So a van pulls up, he gets out, he comes up the driveway, and it's a farmer. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that. He said, hi, I'm Donnie Clark. And I'm thinking, no, you're not. You're not the Donnie Clark. And we got to be fast friends. We really did. He loved Cathy. And but the way things have worked in our life was just a miracle. I mean, why her? Well, at that time, and why that one plant? And the whole thing is amazing. Some really good things have been said about Cathy, and I agree with all of them. And but I'll say this: being a caregiver is not easy. It is really, really not easy. And some of the things that what happened was we grew apart. She didn't hate me. I didn't hate her. We didn't fall out of love or anything like that. It's just that we just got cold towards one another, which can happen. Giving caregiving is hard. And then John and Karen took over, and I came up here to Maine, and but I mean, there was no venom there. I was always proud of her. And if people only really, really knew what that woman went through. I mean, we did the Journey for Justice with Jody how many years ago? We went from Stark Prison to Tallahassee in wheelchairs and never broke the integrity of the march, And we were going to see Jeb Bush, right? And we got there, Jeb Bush wouldn't see us. And then we did get to meet him. And his brother was president at the time. He was the governor, right? So, and this is the way Cathy operated. She said, excuse me. She said, hey, Jeb Bush is going to be in Bradenton. I want to go see him. I said, we can't see him. I said, his brother's the president who has Secret Service all around him. Now I am in cut off shorts, tank top, flip flops. At the time, she didn't have a wheelchair. I had to push her. So we go over. We were at the shopping center, and she said, "Take me over there." And so I went over to where there was some shade because it was a hot day, and we're standing there, and I thought, "Wonder when he's going to get here." Anyhow, a big black van pulls in, and then a little silver car comes out behind it and stops right in front of us. I open the door and Jeb Bush gets out. And he said, "Hello, Governor. My name's Cathy Jordan." I said, "Oh, man." I said, "Yeah, excuse me, sir." I said, "But we're not here for what you're here for. But we appreciate it. We get 5-10 minutes of your time. We'll talk to you about something." He said, "Okay." So, and then he went on and did his thing. And then we're standing outside, and here comes a guy in a suit and tie, and comes up, and I said, "Oh, here comes the excuse why I can't see us." Well, the guy said, "The governor wants you to come inside where it's air conditioned. It's hot out here." And I thought, well, that's pretty nice. And so we went inside, and dignitaries and all these people are trying to get pictures with him, and they're all doing their thing. And here we are standing there, and he opened the door and went in the room. And he looked at us and he waved. He said, come on over here. So we went in, he went in, and then we went in, and then the press tried to get in behind us. And I said, you can't come in here. And then I went, oh, wait a minute. He said, no, leave the press outside. So we get inside the room, and it's just the three of us, right? And I said, thank you for saying this. I said, but I said, like, when they're going to execute somebody, I said, you got the power to stop it. You got that red phone. He said, what? I said, you can stop an execution, right? He says, yeah. I said, well, I'm asking you for her life. And he looked at me and he said, like, what? And she took over. And by the time she got done talking, he had a tear in his eye. And he said, well, there's got to be something we can do. And Cathy would say, well, yeah. And he said, well, look, do you know Charlie Wells? So I know of him. He was the sheriff in our town. He said, well, I know Charlie really well. He said, what we'll do, he said, we'll get together and figure something out for you. And Cathy said, well, I already went to the health department and tried to get cannabis for myself, and they won't let me do it. He said, well, when I go, it'll be a little bit different than when you go in there. So about a week or so later, we get a phone call from Charlie Wells, and he was the sheriff at the time, said, look, me and the governor cannot give you permission to break the law. He said, but we can get you Marinol. And Cathy said, no, you're not a doctor. You can't get me Marinol. And he said, well, no, you're right. So he said, well, what do you want? Cathy said, I don't want to be left alone. Just, I'll be quiet and I'll be over here and I'll grow my pot and just leave me alone. And they did. They left us alone for a long time. And we went on our way, and, I grew some and she had some, and, time went on, and different things have happened. But that's just, like I say, Jeb Bush was compassionate about it. So what happened, how we got, I was growing plants in the backyard. Some realtor came by, looked at them, and I bought the house next door, and I had a extension cord going into my shed. So this woman thought we were squatters and stealing electricity. Little did she know I had the electricity in that house put in my name. She looked over the fence and saw my plants, called the sheriff's office and sent them a picture of my plants. Now, I'm just woke up from a nap. I'm sitting in my easy chair, and here come two sheriffs up the driveway. They did not have their guns out, but they had their hands on their weapons. I jumped up out of my chair and went around and I tried to stop them at the driveway. I said, what are you doing? Oh, this is now a crime scene, and you can't go back in your house. I said, what are you doing here? Where's the crime at? Well, I was very fortunate that I didn't get arrested that day, because I was very, very angry, and I said some things maybe I shouldn't have said. But that's when all hell broke loose, and it made national news, and everybody knew that a disabled veteran and a woman with ALS got busted, and there were stories out that they come in and they threw me on the ground and took her out of her wheelchair and all that stuff. That's not what happened. What happened was they kept us outside the house. That part is true. And I was trying to keep him off my property. And I told the guy, get off my property. I chest bumped him, and I felt his bulletproof vest. He said, you bump into me one more time and I'm locking you up. So I didn't do it twice. Then the DEA guys came. I'm standing in my driveway because they won't let me in the house. And I had one of the smart things I did. I had Cathy go across the street. So it was just me and them. And then so here comes a pickup truck, and the guys get out. Two guys got masks on, ski mask on, and one guy no. And they come up the driveway, and I said, "Is this a joke? What what do you got the mask on for? You know what I mean? Are we that much of a danger to you? And he said, come on, we got to talk. So what happened? Well, I said, well, I can't go in the house. They said, well, you can now. Well, when we went into the house, we sat down, we started talking. And the guy actually said to me, he said, look, I can't legally agree with you, but maybe I can say I don't disagree with you, because they walked through that. They said, we'll do a walkthrough. I said, what's that? And they said, we'll walk through and make sure there's no more growths in here. Go out to your shed, take your plants, and we'll leave. So we're sitting there talking, and the guy said, sign this paper, and we'll do the walkthrough. And then I start to sign the paper. I said, wait a minute, you guys lie for a living. If I sign this paper and you throw me on the ground and handcuff me, I'm going to really be pissed off. So, but they did exactly what they said they were going to do. And we were still sitting there talking, very cordial. And I said something. I can't remember how I phrased it, but I knew there was still some. We kept the pot on top of the refrigerator. And so I said to Cathy, you know, there's that. And the guy said, wait a minute, sir, are you going to say what I think you're going to say? He heard that I was going to say there's still got some up there on the refrigerator. And I find that I got to take it. I'm just here for your plants. Let us get your plants and leave. And they left. And then that's when Morgan got involved, and it made national news. And we became we were minor celebrities, I guess you'd say, because they would talk to John Morgan, and then they would talk to us. And then we talk to Morgan, they would talk to us. Then Morgan would talk about us, and then they would come. So that's the way we got very well known. And the whole time, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, no. We were hooked up with Jody long before that. We met Jody at Lowry Park. Oh, I don't even know what year it was. And we got to be fast friends and worked together for a lot of years and did a lot of good. And but the main thing I want to say about Cathy is that it was never about her. It was always about helping somebody else, you know. And to get that devastating diagnosis at 36 years old is, I remember when the doctor told her, get your affairs in order, and we were both crying. And it was tough. It was a tough thing, but you know, I've never ever met anybody with when she had her mind made up about something, it was going to happen, and that's it, man. That's I followed her lead. I helped her the best I could through the years, and you know, it's all been to this point that the patron saint of cannabis in Florida. It's quite an honor, but
and the doctor was only off by 33 years. He said that she would be dead by 1991. The Social Security Administration actually cut off her Social Security because they thought that she couldn't possibly be alive after 91, correct?
Yeah, we had to go to Social Security and prove she was alive. Yeah, because they said you can't live that long with ALS. And there was no doubt about it. There was absolutely no doubt about her diagnosis. So
do I remember this correctly? Like, she outlived a number of neurologists. Like, there were a couple of neurologists that actually died off until. Was that?
Absolutely? Yeah, she outlived a lot of doctors that you know, that told her to get her affairs in order and all that stuff. She just kept going on, and you know, the neurologists would always say, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop doing what you're doing, even though it's illegal, you know. But
well, I don't think anybody could have stopped Cathy anyway, could they?
Say again?
No one could have stopped Cathy anyway.
No. And then you know, it's an amazing thing, you know, as we went on, and I got better at growing pot, and you know, she's getting a better strain and stuff like that. it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing, and I do believe that once they get once it's finally legal, totally, and they really get to study it, I don't think I mean I just believe there's no end to it. What the plant can do.
Well, I can say that the plant did an awful lot, but I can also say that I think that the love that you had for Cathy all those years, as well as the love from John as well, and Karen, is what also kept her going.
Oh yeah, just like like I said, it wasn't easy. Like Jody said, and Cathy wasn't always happy, but she was never beaten. You know what I mean? She just never give up, and that's when sometimes she would get discouraged, and I would pick her up. You know what I mean? Just come on, we're going to keep on doing this. We came too far to stop now, and then I would get discouraged. I mean, people have no idea how discouraging this fight has been. You know what I mean? Because we ran against more resistance that. One of the first times we went to Tallahassee, they laughed at us. You're here for what? Medical cannabis. Oh, yeah, okay, sure, pal.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You guys are idiots. And we had to stand outside the Capitol and protest and stuff like that. Now, look what the Florida Can's doing. They're going to have that thing in the rotunda. They'll actually have real marijuana plants there in the rotunda. So we've come a long way, man. We're not done yet, but we've come a long way.
We appreciate you. We appreciate your service, as they say, because you are a vet. You probably hear that too much, or not enough. One of the two. But by the way, I was getting a call from the Vatican, and they said that they actually haven't canonized her yet, and said we shouldn't be saying that. So I say, intercourse that. See how nice I'm being?
I don't play by those rules.
Well, I say fuck that. If they won't canonize her, we will.
Yeah.
So we have officially Suncoast Normal canonized her to become the patron saint of cannabis in the state of Florida.
I like that. I like the idea that Normal chooses.
Yeah, you know where that came from, right?
Where?
Greg Gerdeman.
Oh, really?
Dr. Greg Gerdeman said that. Yeah, she's the patron saint. She's the patron saint of cannabis in Florida.
Wow.
So, oh yeah. I mean, she's touched a lot of people. I mean, she's known from coast to coast. Out there in California, she's very well known with the guy who had the first place out there in California. I can't remember his name right now, but he had Harborside.
Yeah, D'Angelo.
Yeah, and she knew all the big players. That's for sure, and they all knew her. So,
and a shout out to the good folks over at Patients Out of Time too, because they did an awful lot of work with her as well. We didn't get anybody on from them, but I did let them know that we were on here, and we will be on here again. Bob, thank you so much for taking your time off. Go grab your motorcycle and do some riding out there in Maine, and enjoy your day, enjoy your Sunday, and we greatly appreciate you, and we miss you here in Florida as well. And we wish you well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the honor of being here, and well deserved for Cathy. She was something special.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
And next week we're back in politics. we are going to have over the next few weeks a whole bunch of candidates, so you can get a chance to know who the heck you want to vote for or can vote for. And we have sent out surveys to all the candidates out there. We're getting a lot of them back right now, some fresh faces, which is wonderful, because if I think anything is the takeaway from the last few weeks is we need fresh faces in Tallahassee, in Washington, D.C., and in every city capital in the state of Florida to turn this state around. And there's a lot of good people who are very educated, very knowledgeable, and very driven, and we're going to let you meet them and hope that they can get in office. Isn't that right, Chris?
Indeed. And if, we only emailed surveys out to candidates that had their email listed on the Division of Elections website for the state of Florida. So if you are a candidate and you didn't have that info updated, particularly on that one particular website, of course, you can visit suncoastnormal.org, and right on our homepage is our 2024 candidate questionnaire. So if you're a candidate for office, we're making it very simple for you. Go to our homepage, let the voters know that you support Normal's agenda in that you want to reform our cannabis system, our cannabis laws in this state and in this country. And we will be very happy to share your views with our members and the general public. So if you're an incumbent and you're watching this show, if you're, an obscure candidate who's maybe non-party affiliated and you want to let voters know that you're in this race against the big major parties, by all means, please go to our website, fill out the candidate questionnaire, and we will be definitely showcasing candidates leading all the way up to the primary election and beyond the primary all the way up to the general election. More than that, again, I want to remind folks that if you have questions about Amendment 3, if you are unsure of where you are when it comes to moving forward with changing cannabis laws in this state, on Tuesday, August 6th, we're going to make it very simple for you. 7 p.m. in the evening, you can get onto your computer and you can participate over all the different social media channels. All you got to do is go to @SuncoastNormal at either our Facebook channel, or maybe you're watching on YouTube or Twitter or Twitch, even Instagram, and check us out. In addition, we have some great partners that are going to be co-hosting with us, medical marijuana and wellness series webinars, the Florida Cannabis Action Network, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and we'll be working with them to also try and simulcast on their social media channels. But this is free and open to the public. We welcome your comments, no different than any other episode of the rotation that we do. So if you have comments, if you have questions, one of the comments that came out today on today's show, someone asked, who's going to help me stay out of prison for growing my own cannabis on my own property and not have to fight, for my livelihood when I'm in prison? Because that is the reality for so many people in this state and beyond, is that, good, hardworking people want to live a healthy life just as Cathy wanted to. And they are persecuted for that growing cannabis comes with some serious charges in this state, that having more than 20 grams comes with felony charges. And so, Amendment 3, people have a lot of questions about it. They have questions about what it does, what it doesn't do. We're going to endeavor to answer those. And we want folks to understand that this is the first step in ending cannabis prohibition. There are so many other steps involved, whether it's getting people the right to grow it at home. Much in the same way when we didn't have smokable cannabis when Amendment 2 passed, it was because of Cathy filing lawsuit, because that was the way that she intook her medicine. And for us, we've always believed the method of ingestion should not be regulated by politicians, but that should be between a physician and the patient. And because of that, Cathy is the reason that folks can actually smoke weed in the state of Florida who have medical cards. And so, again, she is the patron saint of medical cannabis in the state of Florida, whether or not, like you said, Carlos, if the Catholic Church is going to recognize or not, she's a saint in our hearts, and we will always uplift her as such. On that note, sainthood typically requires someone to perform 3 miracles to get it. And so I would say that Cathy has accomplished those 3 miracles in getting the smokable flower, in creating a medical defense, and in inspiring so many others to be activists in this sector. And so she definitely qualifies. But your second step on the sainthood, after you get 2 miracles, they beautify you. And there's someone who definitely deserves beautification, who is also a champion of medical cannabis in Florida, and that's the late great Tim Morgan, who is the brother of John Morgan, who, as we all know, helped fund and lead the charge for Amendment 2 and helped sue for Cathy to get access to smokable cannabis in Florida. Tim recently passed away in the last week. They're actually holding services for him to later today. And so we want to just honor and recognize the life of Tim Morgan and all he did to inspire his brother to do what very few people have ever accomplished, and that is to change laws in a meaningful way to help hundreds of thousands of people who suffer from chronic debilitating illnesses in this state and get relief. And that being said, thank you to all the guests today. Thank you to Bob for sharing his life and story with Cathy. Thank you to all of those activists and friends of Cathy who were here today to say something, and those who weren't, who are just watching at home. And we really appreciate all that you have said and done. And more than that, too often we say nice things about people too late, if you will. And I really do wish Cathy was here to hear all the nice things that folks said about her today. but you know, in a lot of ways, she again was here on borrowed time, and she made the most of it. And so, for all of us here who don't know, you know, when our next day is going to be, I hope that Cathy's example and inspiration is one for you to live your life of hope. For all those folks who are feeling despair and hopelessness, much in the way that we talked about earlier in her story, before the Mayak Gold saved her life, you know, there is definitely hope out there for you. And you know, in the worst case scenario, if you're ever in the worst spot you can imagine mentally, take a hit, take a deep hit, reflect on it, think about it, and realize that there is life worth living. Cathy proved that. She was living proof that life is worth living, and that you can make something of it, even if you think that it's the end of the road for you. You can still open up so many doors for so many other people, and we're just thankful and grateful that she touched our lives. And we here at Suncoast Normal will, you know, officially, in my capacity and power, be inducting Cathy as a lifetime resident member and into our Hall of Fame. And she deserves all the accolades. She'll be the first inductee into our Suncoast Normal Hall of Fame, and a member for eternity, if you will, in our hearts. And we love you, Cathy. Thank you for everything.
So, Kano, Gary,
Yeah.
we sent out the questionnaire.
Yep.
And people sent them back, right? I'm surprised that you said a lot of people have sent them back.
Yeah, well, some of them, I went like 20 or so far. I think 3 of them reached out to me and said, I just wanted you to know what we want your endorsement, and we want to be on the show. And I said, well, talk to us and we'll see how much you know, and we'll tell you what you don't know.
How many responded is like, get bent, you fucking pothead?
I can tell you that, actually. I'm looking at the back end right this second, and let's see what they got to say. So there was a simple checkbox test. How do you support ending cannabis prohibition? And it's medical marijuana, adult use of marijuana, decriminalization, or I do not support ending cannabis prohibition. None of the respondents checked that they did not support ending cannabis prohibition. Out of the respondents, everybody, with the exception of one, chose adult use, and then everybody chose decriminalization and medical marijuana. So that is definitely an interesting trend. Out of the various candidates, 17 out of 19 said that they would sponsor legislation. 15 out of those 19 said that they would become members and attend a general membership meeting in Normal and be a guest speaker. 18 out of 19 said they'd sit down one-on-one with us, and 15 out of 19 said that they would love to be a guest on the rotation. So wow. There's definitely a demand to showcase on this platform as candidates. People want our endorsement. People recognize Normal as the longest and most respected cannabis advocacy organization in this country. And our chapter here at the Suncoast chapter, through the hard work of our amazing board members, Carlos, Gary, Sue, Tiffany, Carla, have been putting in the work over the past several years to rebrand us in a lot of ways. I remember when we first started, we were kind of like the bad boys of cannabis activism. We would pull a giant blunt down your right down in your face. And we changed our tactics a little bit, and I would say in our old age, in the sense of we put on the suits, we go to Tallahassee, and we work through the process now. But social media has really changed the game and giving us the opportunity to be, on your device, in front of your screen, your tablets, and in your homes each and every Sunday, and to give you the opportunity to hear from some amazing guests. This show, through the hard work that Gary and Carlos put in, have had amazing guests, whether it's members of Congress, people seeking the highest office in the state of Florida, to folks, even have school board candidates now, like, hey, do you guys endorse in local races? And I'm just like, I don't know how we would apply cannabis policy to folks who are going to run the school boards. But the fact that those requests exist, and the fact that folks want to be a part of this movement and they want to be on the rotation is just a testament to the hard work that you gentlemen and the rest of our board have put in to make this chapter a success. And people often say, what are you going to do once you legalize it? And I'm glad that those questions get asked, because even in an adult use state, even where we are right now in this country, NORML still has a role to play, and the mission is not yet accomplished. Everybody does not have safe, quality, and affordable access to cannabis who's a responsible user. People still get fired from their jobs, even though they have medical marijuana cards. People still get denied organ transplants, even though they do everything correctly in order to get safe medical access. People still have their kids taken away from them for utilizing a state-sanctioned medicine. These are the issues that we will continue to fight for. People still don't have the right to grow it at home and grow their own organic medicine. Sometimes you get stuck with corporate booth because that's your only option in where the area you live in. And that's something I know Cathy would not tolerate, is smoking corporate booth, because it's the Mayaca Gold. It's the good shit that saved her life and brought her a new perspective on things. And that's why we are going to continue to fight for your right to grow at home. We're going to continue to fight for your right to protect your family, the right to your constitutional right to bear arms. There are so many things that we're going to continue to do. And shout out to the National NORML Legal Committee for filing amicus briefs in all the different cases across the country. I even saw that Norm Kent, who's the former board chair of NORML, who passed away a few years ago, who I have the honor of currently sitting in his former seat on the NORML board, was someone who sued to make sure that Cathy's medical defense was a reality. And these are important issues that patients experience every day. And so again, I say to you, become a member, scan that QR code, make the difference. Your $25 a year goes a long way in ensuring that we can continue to do the work to make sure that every medical cannabis patient has safe access in this state. And hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow us on social media, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, whatever screen that you're looking at right now, so that way we can continue to bring you the best and latest news in cannabis entertainment and policy.
And all those issues that Chris brought up, we have bills to fix those problems. We have written bills. Some of them have gotten filed. We have a fantastic home grow bill that we know is not going to be able to go through the constitutional process to the ballot, because there's not enough money in it to go ahead and get $40 million to get the home grow bill done. But we have a way to do it. But we're going to need your help. We're going to need your time, your treasure, and your talent, and help us go on to the next step, as Cathy would do.
And I think that's a good spot to call it quits.
Yeah.
Well, we're not calling it quits. We're just calling it a day.
Yeah. See you in the rotation next week.
Thank you to all our guests. See you guys in the rotation.